So one of the earliest videos on my channel is a ranking of the Uncharted video games, but since then I haven't really covered any more video game content. But today, despite it being a month or two since the release of the video game, I'm going to be giving my review on The Last of Us Part 2. So The Last of Us Part 2 takes place 5 years after the events of The Last of Us. Instead of following the journey of Ellie and Joel, it just follows Ellie's travel through the post-apocalyptic America. So diving into the pros, I just need to start off by saying I absolutely loved the first game, so I was very excited to play this one. And one thing Naughty Dog does very well is making their video games feel so cinematic. As I mentioned, I covered some content on the Uncharted games a few months ago when I started my channel. But yeah, their games just feel like you're playing through an actual movie. Just like in the first Last of Us, it is continued into the second one. But right off the bat, this introduces us to some new characters. Off the top of my head, Dina and I believe some guy called Jesse. It's safe to say Dina and Ellie are very close with each other, and I really like their relationship, of how close they are throughout this whole game. As I said, this takes place 5 years after the first game, so Ellie's no longer that child we saw. She's now like a young adult, a teenager or whatever. You'd wonder how she would grow up without anyone her age around, but as we see in this, she has quite a few people her age, so she grows up and does a few things that people her age would probably do. Once again, just the graphics on these games keep getting better and better. In terms of graphics, it's a good send-off as one of the bigger games to be released on the PS4 before the PS5 comes out. It didn't let down, and a lot of elements of this felt very nostalgic of the first one, you know, all the parkour you have to do, all the sneakiness, and they added some new things in with, which I thought was very clever, with having dogs being able to sniff out your location when you're being hunted. So I didn't really like to have to put a bullet through one of the dog's heads, as, you know, everyone loves a good dog. Just like the last game, it's really not afraid to get really graphic with its kills. The ones you saw in the last game were mostly when you got caught by a zombie or a click or whatever, so you'd have to restart. But in this one, there are some actual, like, pretty violent cutscenes, and as I said, it's not afraid to get violent, and it really like puts you in shock and nails home some of the tones with that. One thing I've loved about the previous game is you can have your own fight style, you can be stealthy, or you can just go berserk with all your ammo. Personally, I've always been someone who conserves ammo and really tries to be stealthy, so I'm a big fan of the amount of ammo they give out. I know it's probably generated on how much ammo you actually have, because you barely have a full round or something, so I think it's very clever they don't give you tons and tons of ammo. You have to be smart and conserve it yourself. It puts you in some cool areas that don't feel too similar to the first film, but then don't feel too far off of it. And it also has like a look at different groups in this post-apocalyptic world. There isn't just the ones we know. They broaden that. They have the wolves, the Seraphites, also known as the Scars. And then at the end you see the Rattlers. As I said, I'm a big fan of the first one, so I was closely following the news coming up to this, not looking at any spoilers, but there was a lot of backlash and not many people liked it, so I was really confused. The first 13 hours I played through, I was really confused why people disliked it so much, and then the next 10 or so hours happened, and I'm going to get into that in the cons. So now we move into the cons, and I have quite a bit to say about this, unfortunately. Just to get some small details out of the way, there's this minor bit towards the beginning of the game where you have to use a map. It's all open world, and I really didn't like that. It overcomplicated things, and Naughty Dog is known for you having to follow a continuing story, continuing path to progress onto the next bit, and it didn't work for me. It's like in Uncharted 4 and Uncharted The Lost Legacy. I didn't like the open world, and it felt pretty poor and out of place. I guess I'm glad that it was only in there for a tiny bit and wasn't in there for the whole game. Yeah, so as I said, I didn't really have any problems with the first 13 hours of the game. Maybe that open world thing was the only problem I had, but things changed. It seemed we were on track for another good solid follow-up to The Last of Us Part 2 without it trying to do anything too bizarre, but then it made you play as the character Abby. Now, we've seen only a bit of Abby in the first 13 hours or so, first half, but you're not meant to like this character, so it felt like such a bizarre thing to have you play as them. As I mentioned, she's very disliked, and then they try and kind of make you see things from her perspective and make you kind of be on her side more. It tries forcing you to like her, but just you can't like her. She's very unlikable. But I mean, she did have some cool missions, or her story was quite cool, but I felt as though if it was played out as a different character or a whole different character in a spin-off game which isn't related, it could have been a cool look, and a cool look into the perspective of other sides of things, not just from Joel and Ellie. When you're playing from her point of view, you are introduced to two more characters, Lev and Yara. Maybe having those two characters be the main characters in a spin-off game, but with this sort of mission, would have been good. And as I said, it felt like it could be in a spin-off series. This game itself felt like it was a third game or something. There's so many jumps and then flashbacks which felt very messy and so unorganized. Things were very tight and well structured in the first game, and sometimes it felt like they were going through this game and then an idea popped into their head and they're like, oh, we can't go back and change it, so let's just chuck this in there as a flashback. And it just made things very messy, and it really messed with your emotions, but not as in making you like happy, sad. It made you kind of angry about the way they've displayed things. So I think that was very poor from Naughty Dog in this game. Now, I don't know if I'm just concentrating on this too much, as there was many times where I was left very stressful, but the dodge button is meant to be very different to other games. It's not so you can just spam it and then you'll end up dodging. You have to time it perfectly. But there are some times where you're literally cornered and you run out of ammo and you need to run away. So spamming the dodge button is the best option, especially when there's loads of these, I think they're called stalkers, literally on you and you can't do anything. So you have to spam the dodge button, and that doesn't work because you're not timing it. So you just have to sit there and accept death and then restart the checkpoint. And I found that very, very irritating. Like, maybe if they made it work so you could spam it in those sort of scenarios, because there's certain zombies which travel in packs and attack in packs. And I know that's meant to be part of why you're meant to play it strategically, but that was very frustrating and nearly had me smashing my controller. And now I have no problems with the clickers. Like, they're a cool thing. I like that they're quite hard to kill. They have no sight, so you have to quietly sneak up behind and then stealth kill them. But there's one thing that very, very much annoyed me. So you could throw a brick or a bottle in a certain place, and when that smashed, the clicker would go towards that direction because, you know, it heard a noise there, so it'd assume, oh, maybe you're there. But what I don't get, this annoyed me a lot, I would throw a Molotov across the room, and when it would smash, they would run towards me as if they had eyes. I don't get it. It's the same as a bottle. Like, you throw the bottle, it smashes, they go to where it smashes. If you have a bottle which has fire in it, you throw it to where it smashes. You throw it and it smashes. They run to where you throwed it, and it's not like, oh, if you sneak around after you've thrown it and move to a different location. Nope, you throw it. No matter if you sneak around, they know where you are now, so you can't lose them. So that was very frustrating with the clickers. And I'm just going to be honest with you, the ending really dragged on. The downfall of this game was the second half, when it made you play as Abby. But there is this perfect point where, like, they left it in a perfect place to end the game. It was a very satisfying point, or as satisfying as it could be. And I don't know if Naughty Dog did this to kind of be like, psych, but they dragged the game on further 2.5 hours. I was playing, I was like, oh, okay, I can do this review now, the game's over. But nope, it adds on this extra bit at the end, which is where it introduces us to the Rattlers, where I think a spin-off game could be cool to see more of that, because I actually like that a lot. But when you play that next 2.5 hours, you get the same result from where the satisfying ending it was, but some things play out that this ending is no longer satisfying, and I didn't like the ending at all. And mixed in with all these messy flashbacks which fill in different points in time, it kind of makes some of the characters quite unlikable that you have liked. So there's my run of The Last of Us Part 2 over. Yeah, so I know I had a lot to say on the cons, which very frustrated me because I was kind of rating this game as I went along. I was writing all the notes, and I couldn't find any ways to dislike it, just like many others had. But then things changed, and I completely understood why there was a huge outrage. As I mentioned, I played through this. So when you go to manually save the game, it says how many hours you played playing the actual game. Around the 13-hour mark is where this game was at its best for me, where I enjoyed it the most. And for me, then I had it at a 9. and then it made you play as Abby, and as time went on I thought, okay, this is a bit weird, and as it went on I didn't like it either. It dropped down to an 8. By the end, The Last of Us Part 2, it gets a 7 out of 10 from me. You know, a 7's a decent score for a movie, but for a game it's not that great. It's more of a below average score. You know, they got all the details, the attention to detail, all the action scenes, but the story and the approach they took with it really let the game down. Besides that, it was really enjoyable. Where it's a 7 though, it could have been lower, but I constantly wanted to get back on there just to play it. I kind of wanted to get past the Abby bit, but I still wanted to play it. And this is a difficult one, because if you love the first one, you're obviously wanting to play the second one, as it's only another game which is connected. So you could play it, but I feel like you might dislike it as well, but it's just my opinion. Thank you for watching. I really hope you liked my first proper video game review. Please let me know in the comments what you thought of The Last of Us Part 2, if you agree with me or disagree with me completely. But yeah, thank you for watching, and I hope to see you in my next video.